Buenas noches. Si necesita interpretación en español, por favor presione el icono del globo y seleccione la palabra español. Gracias.
We want to welcome everyone who has joined us and review a few ground rules for this evening's event before we get started. Attendees will remain muted during the event. Please write your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. This presentation is being recorded in both English and Spanish for future uses. By staying on the Zoom, you acknowledge this recording. And with that, we'll begin the presentation. We'd still like to also remind you to follow us on Salem Safe YouTube. That's where these videos will be available on our SAFE website. And then we'd like to also thank Clean Water Action and Old Bedford Village Corp for their sponsorship for this evening's event as well. So with that, we'll begin our Win for Future Generations. Thank you for joining us. Our agenda, we'll have a welcome and introductions, a few updates, and then our speaker, Megan Amsler, will be joining us, and then we'll have questions and answers at the end. And Pat, I'll hand it over to you, I believe. Or not. So I'd like to welcome Megan Amsler, Executive Director of Self-Reliance since 2001. She's got a wide range of renewable energy projects and workforce training development. She teaches a variety of classes, elementary to college level. She's helped establish the first US GWO Basic Safety Training modules and the GWO Basic Safety Training instructor since 2019. And I will turn off our presentation and allow Megan to start showing hers.
Super, thank you so much, Cindy. Let me just, oh crud, hold on. There it is. Good evening, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here with you all tonight, and thank you for the introduction. Just a little bit about Self-Reliance. As Cindy noted, I've been there since 2001. It is an energy nonprofit that's led by women. And let's see, I have been working in the KidWin space for a long time, since like the mid 2000s. And I'm going to talk to you tonight about KidWind and the KidWind Offshore Wind Academy that Self-Reliance in collaboration offered at Mass Maritime last summer for students and for teachers. And it's really a program that's designed to increase diversity in this predominantly white European male industry that's new to this country, but has been going on in Europe for the last 40 years. And yeah, so we're just really here to raise awareness and help. Programs like this are designed, my intention, and I think all my colleagues that participate in this program as well with me, their intention is to pique the interest of young students in perhaps seeing themselves in the offshore wind industry and getting excited about science, technology, engineering, and math. So that just, briefly, Block Island on the left-hand side, crew transfer vessels to the middle there. How we get off and on those vessels is something that I teach in sea survival at Mass Maritime. And yeah, so this KidWind Offshore Wind Academy is a week-long program, and it's designed for kids hands-on activities in the classroom. We go on really fun field trips, which I'm going to show you about. And we have our dates already for next summer, which will be July. We come in on a Sunday afternoon and then we leave on a Friday, and it's free to participate in, and you actually get paid $100 a day to come. And for any teachers who are interested, we also offer graduate credit, free graduate credit, and we pay you a stipend also to come. And we also do a travel stipend too, to help reduce the barriers to getting down there. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to come to Mass Maritime, this is the campus. Just a little bit of an cool shot. So it's geographically defined by water, pretty much. Some really amazing renewable energy installations here too. So there's a 660 kW Vestas wind turbine that we went to check out, and there's PV on a bunch of the roofs. And yeah, there's it's pretty exciting. The kids get to stay in the dorms, which I don't know if you can see my mouse. We stayed in this, so waterfront. It was pretty fun. One of the things that we did during our field trip agenda was we went and checked out the wind turbine on the campus. So here's just one of the teachers and a couple of the students that were part of this summer's program. So we got to go and listen and learn about this machine on campus and what it does for the campus in terms of generation of electricity. We take really fun field trips. We went up to the blade testing facility that's up in Boston, and we got to see actually the largest wind turbine blade in the world right now, which is up there. And I urge folks, if they're interested in going on a field trip, a really cool field trip where you learn a lot about engineering. And this is a great place, and it's right here, right in the Commonwealth, not that far away. And this is a place where students and adults can really see the application of all the different facets of science, technology, engineering, and math at play, and directly correlated to the offshore wind industry. Here are some of our students. Actually, it's all our students outside at the blade testing facility. Because of proprietary issues, we couldn't get a picture next to the gigantic blade, but this is a wind turbine blade that's sort of off to the right hand side of the photograph there. We had the opportunity to spend an entire day at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, which was really exciting for the kids. I think this was one of the highlights for them, to really get out and see what is working in an institution like this, where everything is STEM based. So on the right hand side, we have one of our course participants. He's actually piloting a remotely operated vehicle in this test tank on the right hand side, that orange thing with the glass in front of him. So you learn how to do that. And then the kids on the left are showing the little 3D printed keychains that they got, and everybody had their names printed on there. And I think for kids who have names that are not often seen on those little kiosks, those little roundy round things that have keychains or ornaments or whatever that have people's names on them, this was a really special thing because it was very personalized, and they actually got to see these things being made in the lab. So this was just a couple of the things that they got to learn about. This young woman who started minorities in shark science, and we got to hear from some women working on squid and acoustics, and how that applies directly to offshore wind, as well as the marine mammals and understanding the acoustics. How do you survey the acoustics and communication of marine mammals, and how that applies to, how does that fit into offshore wind and the things that we're monitoring for, and along those lines. We had an opportunity to have a virtual reality experience. So here you can see we have just two of the students participating with that, and it is super cool. You put the headset on, you feel what it feels like to be on an actual vessel, and a crew transfer vessel, and you go up to the transition piece of a wind turbine, you climb up, you're not actually moving, but you're going through the motions, and then you can teleport yourself up to the top of the wind turbine and see this magnificent view, and then teleport yourself into the inside of the wind turbine. So it really gives anybody who puts these VR headsets on a fabulous sense of what being offshore is like, without actually going out and spending the whole day on the water to go see something, say, like Block Island. So the whole premise of KidWind is with the design engineering principles, right? So you design, you take your image of whatever you think you're gonna build in your mind, you put it to paper, and then you build it, and then you test it. And sometimes blades go flying off, sometimes your tower tips over, you tweak it, fix it, and then you retest. And so this is just the one on the left, just to show you, these are where the students were, they're literally working on things with glue guns and mat knives, and really trying to figure out what is their machine actually going to generate any electricity. And then they do some calculations around that. On the right-hand side, this is one of our participants showing on the last day, demonstrating his creation, and we had some visitors from Mayflower Wind and from Vineyard Wind. So this was an opportunity for the students to hear from some guest speakers. What were the pathways, the career pathways that these two young women took? And they're often not linear. And so I think that's really important for people to remember, that having those personal connections and hearing people's stories really helps make things real, and understand that if I'm interested in being into this, moving into this sector at some point, becoming familiar with those pathways. So that was really exciting. And then this, I just want to share with you, hopefully this is going to work. On the left-hand side, we had these two young ladies were working on their floating project. So we had a bunch of fans out here, and that's what they ended up with. So pretty cool that after a week, they were able to design a wind turbine that generated electricity and also remained upright in the little test tank that we had. And then this is just a little image of the turbines that everybody had, that we just had outside. So you can see that everything was able to move around, even just with the gentle breeze blowing. No. Shoot. Okay, here's another. So you get to see the some other students with their floating designs here. And this is now part of the KidWind National Challenge. So that I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But here again, there was a lot of testing, a lot of tweaking of designs. A lot of people brought their designs down to the test tank and realized, crud, it's falling over and a blade fell off and got all wet. And so there was, back up to the shop where you had to fix things up. Overall, the KidWind is a national program, and there is a national competition, and it sort of filters down, right? You have a local competition. The winners from that go on to a regional competition, and then ultimately onto a national competition. And there are prizes and prize money and fun things like that. And it's a really great experience. And it's held every year. So this is just a little bit about where you can go to get more information about the KidWind Offshore Wind Academy. And I want to give a little shout out to Jessica, who is in the upper left-hand, she's on the left-hand side there in that photo. She is a Salem High School student, and she was a participant in our program. And she and her partner made a floating turbine. And so I am sure that if you as a student or as a parent have any questions about the whole program and how it was, I'm sure that Jessica would be more than happy to chat. So just want to speak to the collaboration that went into putting this program together. We have a collaborator from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, University of Delaware. The man standing on the left-hand side of that image is John Madsen, and he's a professor from University of Delaware who worked with us. We were really blessed to have the diversity, equity, and inclusion leader at Mass Maritime, do a bunch of exercises with us and sort of team building, which was great. And then we also had a collaborator from UMass Amherst Clean Energy Cooperative Extension. So it's great to have all of these fabulous colleagues working together. And I certainly hope that we can appeal to have some more students and teachers come from the Salem area. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you, Megan. I'm just monitoring the Q&A box right now.
Okay.
I know that we've got some really great community leaders on the call, and so I'm hoping that we have some from folks that are involved in the unions or education. Definitely, this is a great time to speak up and get your questions answered. Megan, how long have you been in the wind industry?
So I have been in the wind industry since the mid 90s, because I worked on some, I worked for John Todd, who's ecological wastewater guy. And my first experience with wind was on a sort of off-grid floating lake restorer device that had solar and wind on it. So
it's a long time. I've
Yeah.
started calling Megan the Queen of Wind. So she's a great resource. We're so lucky to have her with us tonight. So the first question we have here, did you say that the testing facility has the largest blades in the world right now?
Yes, the Haliade X is there, and that is at the moment the largest blade. It's going to be utilized on the Haliade X turbine, which is a GE sort of 12 to 14 megawatt turbine. So if anybody's been out to Block Island to see that array out there, those are 6 megawatt turbines. So these things are massive.
Wow. And then for Kid Wind, I think I know the answer to this, but it would be great to hear it from you. What is the cost for students?
It's free. It's free. We actually pay students $100 a day to participate. So they end up at the end of the time with a $500 gift card. And then we also pay for transportation. And that's funded through the generosity of the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. They're funding this program. And so we ran it last summer, and we will be running it again next summer.
That's great. And then I know it's challenging in the summers to get teachers because it's summer.
Yes.
They're also free as well, correct?
They are. Yep. Same thing. And then we threw in the carrot of the graduate. We offer graduate credit, a free graduate credit from the University of Delaware. I think I was just on the phone today with Mike Arquin from Kid Wind. And we're talking about how to maybe redesign the teacher component and have some cohorts from other states and teachers working together in that way. So I get it. Teachers at after a long school year are like, no, don't make me be in a dorm sitting with a setting with a bunch of kids. Is the last thing I want. So we are really trying to appeal to the teachers' needs and
well, and one thing that when I was doing the research myself, there are resources that those teachers can then go back to their classroom with. So
that's right.
That there's value in that. And I've also noticed that the Kid Wind website has remote courses and
yes,
and some classroom stuff for teachers that they send.
Tons of curriculum online. We were just talking about that and sort of how there are, based on the geography, we have a history here in New England or Massachusetts of offshore wind because of Cape Wind and, things happening here already. We've got the blade testing facility, we have the port to go check out, and Block Island is relatively close. So I think we're going to try and reimagine what the teacher component looks like and make it a little more flexible. And I would love to hear from, if there are any teachers that want to reach out and say, this is what would work for me and my colleagues. And if you actually want me to come into your classroom, I'm also happy to do that, happy to bring the virtual reality and, talk, I have a little short presentation that I can do just to kids and help them wrap their heads around, like, what is this stuff?
It sounds really engaging. So one question from the audience along these lines is, how are students selected to participate in the program? Are there any criteria to participate?
So we're really hoping to get rising sophomores through seniors. This last year, we're looking for students that are coming from, we want a diverse group. That being said, we're not asking any screening questions around that. So it's, and that's, right now, our last summer, we were really lucky to get this fabulous representation from students all over, and, and not have it be all the white kids that likes to, kids that have the opportunity to sign up for these things, and that have people shoving things in their face saying, here, go sign up for this. And I think one of the things that we were really mindful about is, if this is your first time away, and trying to give students an opportunity to come if they've never been at a sleepaway camp. And as I mentioned before, we offer travel stipends. And so that's another thing, is breaking down the barriers for, a student from Springfield or somewhere in Western Mass. How do they get to Bourne, Massachusetts in the middle of the summertime? And so that's important to us. We are you can, you register, and then you get an application that you have to fill out. So there's a little bit of writing in there. And so that's, we ask some questions about, tell us why you would want to come. And that sort of helps us with the selection process. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so great, thanks. I keep thinking myself about how we broaden the reach, and it's really great to hear that you would be open to being tapped to come to schools and classrooms, and maybe getting some hands-on with our students, because obviously we can't bring everyone out there.
Right.
And so being able to bring it to the classroom is so great. And to know that this is curriculum that's all over the country
That's right.
Like, this is a unifying curriculum is
Yes.
really incredible. Are there any talks about going younger with this curriculum, and developing curriculum for a younger audience?
There is, absolutely. If you go on the KidWind website, there is middle school, and I've taught it, I've gone to a 3rd grade class and gone a couple times, and we pull out the topographical maps, we learn about wind, and it's a, sort of a history of wind. I will say that doesn't, it's really how much they want to grasp. But the creations that the kids come up with are just as fabulous. We haven't done floating with the younger kids, but yeah, there's absolutely an opportunity. I will say that the scope for the Offshore Wind Academy that we do in the summer, that is based on those parameters for high school kids.
Okay. And then for the KidWind competition that you discussed, I'm sorry if I missed this, do we know the dates for that? And is it that you have to have participated in one of these events too?
No, you
Okay.
can have a little regional, and the rules are all, again, this sort of goes back
All
to the
there.
whole KidWind thing. It's all available online, the rubric in terms of, how things are scored and all of that fun stuff. It doesn't have to be an offshore thing. You can do just like a land-based turbine, because we had to build this tank, and there are some barriers to that, right? As things get colder. And that was one of the things that I was just talking with Mike Arquin about tonight was, you can use if you don't have a big tank, you could have a little, like, you can buy these tubs to mix cement in at Home Depot, and use a fan, and then some kind of a piece of wood or plastic to move the water and make a wave in there. And it gives, it's not quite like the thing that we had set up at Mass Maritime, but it gets you pretty dang close.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm happy to be a resource and helps teachers around that sort of thing.
Great.
One thing that I have done in the past is, for when teachers have a professional day, is come in and do that. So, I think teachers in Massachusetts have to do a certain number of those schools out that day, right? And so go in and we do a fun teacher, let's build this stuff. And and that I should also mention that teachers get resources from us too as part of
Mhm.
participation. So
Mhm. Our team here would love to hear a little bit more about how you recruit, some of your favorite stories or tools, as we're sort of navigating what to us is a new industry out here, but I know is not in your world. There's that initial spark that sort of needs to happen, and sort of that connection between like, know that you can make a living and a good living in these careers. So I'd love to just hear more about what works.
So I mean, this is the first time I've ever done a sleepaway camp. That was new. And so I have done more, I will go to the Wind Power Conference. I flew to Los Angeles, I flew to Pittsburgh. Teachers would come to the Wind Powering or it's called the American Clean Power now. It used to be the American Wind Energy Association, but they have an annual conference. And they would do a fair amount of recruiting. So I've gone all over the place to teach this stuff. It's definitely good in Massachusetts because we have the curriculum frameworks where, get out of there. By grade, you can just really plug and play the KidWind curriculum into that, and it's not as heavy a lift for teachers who are like, I have to teach X, Y, and Z before the end of the year. I will also say that we had a lot of girls from Girl Scouts participating, and I will say I'm going to go to this event out at WPI in a couple weekends from now that's scheduled for it's a Girl Scouts event, and I'm going to bring the Vinci VR so that the girls can put on their the headsets and kind of experience what is this, and I think those are good tools. And again, like having me come into the classroom, that's what kind of gets people excited. But I should also mention that like KidWind's not the only game in town. There are for Wind, it's definitely the only viable game in town that really, builds a lot of interest and plugs into the curriculum frameworks and that sort of thing. But there, for students who are interested in the offshore renewable energy field, like there's, if you're interested in coding, there's instrumentation, there's a whole like remotely operated vehicle challenge that's out there. And I have a colleague who does that kind of stuff in Massachusetts. So, if you want to do something that's not totally wind based, there's a lot of things that are available in the blue economy,
Yeah.
about kelp and ROVs and salinity monitors and all kinds of things like that. So I just throw that out there.
Yeah. And I remember speaking with you recently about some of this, and you had mentioned that the Girl Scouts have a specific badge for wind. And I love that. So I'm wondering if there's tools that we can implement here that we can learn from the Girl Scouts.
Yeah. So I mean, I knew that they had a badge years ago, but when I just went through the national list and trying to figure out like, so where can we plug KidWind in? And it turns out that the wind badge isn't there anymore, but there's a STEM badge and some other things that in a couple of weeks, I'm going to meet with the Massachusetts Girl Scouts leaders and basically be like, hi, we want to plug this in. And so that girls can get a badge through that. And then Girls Inc. is another organization that has been really great in terms of helping recruit students for the offshore wind, KidWind Offshore Wind Academy.
Okay, you're on top of it because that was my next question is
yeah.
What type of organizations are you working with? Sound Girl Scouts, Girls Inc. What else? Who other organizations out there are great partners?
So I mean, really, we just tried to raise awareness on most of the environmental science listservs that teachers and community organizers see, and then can help spread that word. we mail, we email out to teachers and we sent packets out to schools. But again, this last year was our first go round at this. So it's hard because people are like, what is this? We don't really have a ton of track record around here for this event. So.
Sure. I do notice that our co-chair is here and is raising her hand. So I was just gonna let Pat speak if she has the Wi-Fi for it. She's in South Carolina right now.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, Pat.
It's been great talking with you over the last couple of months. It's so inspirational, and I love your whole approach to diversity, to inclusion. I mean, it's wonderful the way you personally struggle with issues and have developed your own heightened sensitivity and are willing to share that process with us. We loved it. My question was going to be about Girls Inc. too, because I'm very high on the work that Girls Inc. in Lynn does in particular. And in Salem, we have the Girls and Boys Club. And I've been dreaming of ways that we might be able to get you to come out and help facilitate a joint meeting, some hands-on thing for kids from Girls Inc. in Lynn and the Girls and Boys Club in Salem. And I think that is the way that, we can begin to build a pipeline. I mean, we all are sick of hearing supply chain and all that. I'm thinking about a supply chain of great young people, particularly people living in environmental justice cities like Salem and Lynn and Peabody and Gloucester, because we're all close to the ocean. So kids know that the ocean is there. It's a reality for them. And I guess my dream is to scheme with you, Megan, about ways that we could get the kids in those wonderful organizations excited about this. And I know we also have on this Zoom call Beth Contos, who is the union president of the Massachusetts American Federation of Teachers union, and she is really high on wind. She always describes herself as green, which I love. It's wonderful hearing a union president saying that. But I'd like to scheme with you about ways that we could bring this, in particular, to environmental justice gateway cities up here on the North Shore. And I can imagine kids learning about the whole prospect of going to Mass Maritime. I mean, I'd also like to develop a pipeline for Mass Maritime, because that's where our kids can get college educations that will help them in this. But we're also interested in education in the community colleges, in colleges like Salem State and Mass Maritime, but also in our community colleges and just in apprenticeship training programs. So I guess the question is, all of my questions and all of my dreaming and scheming is about how can we set the stage for you, Megan, to make some inroads up here on the North Shore in particular?
Yeah, and those are all really, they're good questions, and certainly not all of them are answerable tonight. I will say that I have been working most recently with Building Pathways South, which I think I mentioned to you. It's a union pre-apprentice program, and their leader is definitely focused on DEI. And, how do I think there's also this idea of exposing these pre-apprentices in the unions to the offshore wind industry, albeit many of these jobs are, for the first project, they're considered short service jobs. But getting into the union and sort of experiencing the different, going to the IBEW, going to the iron workers, going to the carpenters, seeing what the pile drivers do, all of those opportunities for young people to see, oh, these are really good paying jobs and I'm good with my hands, and then I have some choices. I think that is a very, very powerful thing. And I just was at a training today And one of my students from this Building Pathways program, they're with the union, and one of the first crew that's being selected to work on Vineyard Wind. Have another young woman who was also in my first class, and she's working on the substation in Hyannis for Vineyard Wind as an apprentice in the IBEW. So it's really nice to see these kids, I call them kids, but they're young adults that they know what offshore wind is because they have taken my 27-hour class. And the woman who runs that Building Pathways program, that was her vision, was I want these kids to see that this is an industry.
I love that story of the very specific students that got to make their way up from that course to really be in the industry. That's awesome to see. I just wanted to call out that we have somebody in the attendees list from LEAP for Education, which is an incredible organization in Salem that has reach over, it sounds like over 500 students in Salem, Lynn, and Peabody, and they worked with under-resourced minority students. And so I do know that LEAP has already looked into KidWind and is going to take some of those virtual courses. Some of their educators are looking into it. So the news is spreading, and it's great that that's a resource, and thank you, LEAP, for being here with us. We have another question. Pat mentioned Beth Contos, and I'm sorry we can't bring our attendees in to ask these themselves, but she was asking if Mass Maritime training maybe could be translated at the North Shore Community College or Salem State, if there are things that could be.
Which training specifically?
Probably anything around wind, but I'm just guessing here.
So we have the very specific to wind is the Global Wind Organization basic safety training. And I will say that there's a lot that goes into that. That took us 10 years to stand up that program. There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of equipment. You have to have instructors. We have people coming in from all over the place to take those classes. And the way I look at it is like, there's lots of different roles to play. It's really about figuring out what's the niche, what, who are the potential professors at the area colleges and universities that might be interested in sort of expanding into offshore wind. There's the Collegiate Wind Challenge, which is through the U.S. Department of Energy, and Mass Maritime just got a team, but that's open, right? You can start off with it's like an apprentice thing for a year, and you can find all of that stuff on the DOE's website. But it's then there's a challenge that's designed, and in my conversation with Mike Arquin today, he's like, oh yeah, I am a resource for all of the teams across the country. So and the students actually get points for going out and doing educational outreach in the community. So that might be something, and thinking about, I was just looking at, there's this amazing organization that's out in Chicago called like the Chicago Land Renaissance Manufacturing. I'm totally butchering what it is, but it is this amazing, it's an organization that is designed to create a pipeline for Black residents in Chicago into manufacturing and building wealth and showing that there are, there's a pathway up. And so, replicating some models like that, I think are absolutely worth looking at and saying, what do we want this to look like, right? Because this industry is new here, we are kind of in this unique space where it's incumbent upon us to think about that, take the time, look at the big map, talk to people, and then figure out like, all right, what is our subject matter expertise in this region? And then what is the industry and what does the industry need? What are the overlapping industries that exist and how do they overlay throughout the supply chain of offshore wind? Widget company X, and maybe they are looking to expand and offer, I'm totally making this up, but like offer ball bearings, you know,
Mhm.
or, you know, maybe there's a sensor, a company that makes, you know, some kind of sensor, and there's an opportunity to have this in the offshore wind, or it's in, you know, from a climate science, if we want to back up even further and think about how are we moving along in monitoring the good work that's being done to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and, you know, thinking about that. So I think there's an endless amount of opportunity to really have Salem and the North Shore create from the ground up what they want their role to be.
That's
That help?
wow. I wish I could end it there, but we have more.
Okay.
That was so good. I feel energized. Quick comment from Beth. She says we have Pathways in Lynn, which is really
Oh, okay.
exciting. So they could do
Excellent.
that at their vocational school. I would be remiss if I didn't ask some questions that I think are on students' minds.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of them couldn't be here today because they're at our
Sure.
Salem parade, which is a big deal in our community. So one is what's the pay, right? Like what's the pay?
Oh, it's $100 a day.
Expect? Oh, I mean, like when you get into
Oh,
this industry,
okay. Right, not for the kid
what's some
wimping.
general sense of the pay?
Ah.
I know it's going to vary based
It
on the
is.
different jobs, but if you could give us a sense of some of those core roles and what you can make, and then the timeline it takes to get to that, like how many years do you have to put in?
Yeah,
to
those
become
are
a
good
job?
questions.
Yeah.
So I will say that, you know, as I mentioned, there are some apprentices that just started apprenticing for the IBEW. I don't know what the wage is, but, you know, they're making good money in the unions. Because we have a lot of union participants come through the GWO basic safety training that I co-teach. I think, you know, underwater divers, those guys make a lot of money. And I want to say like 6 figures. And there's a range in that 6 figure, right? Depending on where you're going, if you're going far offshore. For some of the other things, you know, onshore versus offshore, you are paid more money for being offshore because you're basically compromising your life. You can't go home to your family. You're out there for 3 weeks at a time. Operations and maintenance technicians for offshore wind, they make, again, like 6 figures, and there is room. You don't always have to be offshore, right? There's a pathway sort of into the back office if you are listening to your body and saying like, yep, I've been out here climbing enough. I think I would like to take my expertise, and maybe I'm a high voltage expert and I would like to go work in the back office somewhere. You can make those transitions. You can work on a cable laying vessel. There's really a ton. And that's one of the things that I do in my pre-apprentice 27-hour class is I go through all of if you're interested in engineering, we go through the list of just, these are some examples of the jobs that you can get. If you're interested in public relations and you're more of like a psychology, sociology person, here are things. If you're a finance person, here's, you know, and here's what the pathways are. Some people do ask, they get to the point where they're like, okay, I'm interested in this. Where would you recommend that I go to school? Mass Maritime has an energy systems engineering program. I definitely will also just give a shout out to the Mass CEC's internship program, because that way I have been hosting interns probably for the last 13 years. I have had lots of interns come through the Mass Maritime, primarily the energy systems engineer program, that major, but I've had students from lots of other places. I had a student from Cornell this summer, one from Bowdoin, one from UMass Amherst. So there's an opportunity to come and I'm promoting it because there's such a diversity of organizations that you can go and work for and find mentors and start networking. The young woman that I showed on the picture who works for Mayflower, she was my intern in 2020. And so she now works for Mayflower Wind. So there's it's an exciting thing that we have here that our ratepayer dollars are supporting in Massachusetts. So just want to give a shout out. Did I totally avoid part of your question? I can't remember.
Timeline. I know, and that's so
Timeline.
tough because it's job dependent, but
It is, absolutely. But, you know, I think the thing to think about is that the offshore wind industry is just beginning in this country. It happens to be beginning off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, but if I showed you a map of where all the lease areas are that are all the way down the eastern seaboard, pretty much, there's a pipeline that's over the horizon. So we will be seeing development for many years to come. I think the earlier that people get into, if they want to go into the unions or they want to go work for a company like Siemens Gamesa or Vestas, the turbine manufacturer companies, there will be jobs for quite a while. And, the most recent leases that were sold in February or March of this year, they brought in over $1 billion just for the water column lease. This is, it's big. A lot of the stuff that I do try to talk to students about is how renewable energy in general, like offshore wind is not a fabulous example of this, but, if we're talking about solar and just understanding renewable energy versus fossil fuel and sort of the distributed generation pieces, it's a way to democratize our energy. And if you have looked at all to see what the proposed electricity rates are just on the supply side for 2023, it is heart-stopping. 60 cents a kilowatt hour, 40 cents a kilowatt hour, these are not sustainable, and it's gas, right? So thinking about how do we as communities shift that dialogue and be supportive of renewable energy, whether it's interconnection into our communities and jobs and all of those different things. It's a big paradigm shift for the way we have been living our lives, paying off the utilities every month. So sorry, little side junket there, but
no apologies. You're in the right environment for that conversation. I am gonna end this with Cindy Loopy, who is Clean Water Action's Cindy, what is your title? Oh my gosh, I was going to say director.
Let me say it.
Okay.
Cindy is the New England director of Clean Water Action.
Yes.
And I just my previous Zoom was at Clean Water, that Bonnie joined for part of it, but was Clean Water Action's 50th anniversary. So we have so much at SAFE, we have so much to be grateful to Clean Water Action for, but all of New England, all of this country has a lot to be thankful to Clean Water Action. So Cindy, whatever questions or comments you have, we'd love to hear it.
Well, first off, it is just so fun to be together with you, Megan. I mean,
I haven't seen you in years.
I know I think all of you know this based on this amazing event, but Megan has been one of the anchors on the Cape and islands in that area for this kind of visionary, multi-layered work, building strong communities together around justice. So it's so great to to hear your wisdom on this topic.
Thank you.
I also, just want to say, one of the things that I see that's so powerful in this space is that this is very place-based work, and work on the Cape and Islands and the eastern part of Massachusetts and the sort of greater Salem North Shore. It feels very, very community-based and Cape-based. So I loved you had a very quotable soundbite around building this together from the ground up. So that I think is so clearly the vision of everyone on this call too. It's just great to be of like mind and seeing this potential together. I guess one of my wishes coming out of tonight, just knowing as an organizer that you want to make progress, you bring the people on the front lines in sort of not about us, without us. And so I wonder if that's true for students and for teachers and other people you may be working with, Megan, who might be great spokespeople on, podcasts or blogs or social media, or really whatever people might be willing to do. If we want to reach young people, I wonder if there are any students you've worked with who might be willing to do a little crush.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's definitely, we did have a young woman from Lynn who was she was a part of Girls Inc. that came. I know that when I reach out to these kids to ask them anything, it's like, I'm in school right now.
I know, so busy, and that's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
fair and legit, and we don't want to exploit their time.
No,
either.
but it is
Yeah.
a good point. And maybe if I had something tangible, like, would you be interested in being a guest on the podcast? That might be something that would, oh yeah, I'll pay attention to that. And
I think we should plot, because I
Yes.
know between SAFE's incredible base and network, there are a lot of opportunities for
Yeah.
lifting up the voices of the innovators, the people who are jumping in and working to bring others along and open some doors. I also just want to join SAFE in giving a huge shout out to our labor allies, because we know, based on past experience, that training alone is not going to get us where we need to go. We need to have apprenticeships and formal paid trainings that lead to paid jobs. So again, just I think it's great to be of like minds on this, and working with, sort of, we're all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
With the wind at our back. Like how
Yeah.
many metaphors can I throw into that?
I will say that the apprentices, and I'm just sort of learning about how the various unions work, but they were really clear that no, you're paid as an apprentice. And if you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, there's an increased investment tax credit associated with both wind and solar if you are using apprentices. And so I think it's very interesting to me. Somebody was paying attention to what Vineyard Wind was doing in their public labor agreement, and that trickled down, I think. And
Well, I did hear from Gina McCarthy that the only reason she showed up, like that she picked of all the places she could go to sort of raise the spotlight on wind development, she picked Massachusetts because there was a PLA in place. And Gina is a strong Massachusetts women leader, and she feels really strongly, as do all of us, that there's a reason we can get farther with labor, and we need to make sure that we're not cutting any corners or taking shortcuts that affect this exciting new innovative economy. We've learned a lot from past mistakes and from past efforts, and we want to put our best foot forward here.
And I think one of the unique things, the sort of lens that I look at this is, we have a bit of a cowboy mentality when it comes to safety in this country. And having the Europeans come here, and a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I have OSHA certification and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. This is a whole different ball of wax. The safety culture is zero harm. It is very different. You have to be a team player. You really have to check your ego at the door, because they won't hire you if you are not a team player and you're not paying attention to safety. And oh yeah, I have to learn how to rescue my coworker off of a ladder and be comfortable with that. So I spend a fair amount of time talking to people when I'm teaching working at Heights, like, you got to get with the program here. So yeah, I think we have a lot to learn in terms of collaboration and working with the unions, and also helping the European, right? It's different. The Europeans are coming over here and they're not used to working with union labor, the same kind of union labor we have here. So learning curves for everybody.
Great. This was a fantastic discussion. Thanks, Megan, for being with us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
We always learn so much when we're with you. I'm realizing I didn't introduce myself. My name is Bonnie Bain, and I am SAFE's offshore wind coordinator. So you'll see more of me in the community, folks who are on this call. Just to let you all know, we do have a series of events that we're continuing to hold around wind jobs, but we're going to take a pause in that and talk about the big picture of wind in November. So Salem's League of Women Voters, in partnership with SAFE, will be hosting a conversation on SATV's program Engage. That will feature Amber Hewitt with the National Wildlife Federation, sort of giving us that broad view of why wind, why New England. Seth Luttrell from the city of Salem will be speaking about our specific port and what developments have happened. So there was just a purchase by Crawley to take over that development. Esmeralda Basono, and Pat doesn't know this, but she'll be there as well. Esmeralda and Pat will be speaking on behalf of SAFE and all the efforts that we have underway as an organization. So just appreciate everyone being with us today. Do look out for that event and definitely reach out if you'd like to be involved in our work. We have working groups. So if you're interested in research or you want to help us put on events like this, there's a space for you under SAFE's umbrella. So thanks so much again, Megan. Everyone have a great night.
You too.